working with Tim Van Patten from the States, wonderful director. And yeah, it's kind of, I'm a big fan of dark sci-fi, to be honest. So, you know, and I loved the series before I was able to get onto it. And so it was just, you know, it's kind of a dream job for me. So I really, you know, I quite liked the sort of, I guess, the intellectual challenge of kind of dystopian. Also, the, you know, Hang the DJ was the episode that I worked on, and it's, you know, it's actually got some lightness in it for a Black Mirror. You know, it's not completely. I mean, there's some dystopia in there, obviously, but it, you know, there was some love, there was some, you know, kind of touching stuff in there and that. So it kind of, I think I got off lightly.
Now, you said you're a fan of dark sci-fi. Is there a particular show or movie we should check out other than Black Mirror?
Well, you can check out my film when I finished it. That is literally a black and white dystopian sci-fi. Um, yeah, it's black and white because it's film noir, but also because it's a lot cheaper to make a film with that many visual effects and that amount of production design, where you don't have to worry about the color.
Now, this is
So,
a film you're personally directing.
yeah,
You've
so
done
I've
directing in the past, so
that's right. I started off doing music videos coming out of film school, and you know, I did some shorts as well. But like, as far as kind of my professional work, I was employed as a director of music videos for quite some time. Did a few commercials and stuff as well. But I kind of fell into editing through cutting my own stuff. I was doing narrative music videos, so like, which are deeply unpopular with musicians. Apart from the few, obviously, who employed me. Hopefully that's true anyway. But yeah, like, you know, I was sort of offering kind of something alternate, which was a bit, it would always be a bit left field, and kind of just make do a narrative out of the music. So I didn't really worry too much about what kind of music I was doing it to. I was just interested in using film. I mean, they're all shot on film, like when I was doing that. And sort of playing with the toys like motion control, and just trying to put together stories and craft stories, albeit like in a little 3-minute thing. So but I was cutting those, and they were stories, and eventually I got my first Channel 4 job, because the director wanted someone who could cut to music, which obviously is pretty much all I've done professionally at that point. So I managed to sort of blag my way in without ever having assisted, to a sort of 6-part edit job for Channel 4 here in the UK. And, you know, and it was a mad show, but like, it allowed me to then move on to sort of develop this whole other career I wasn't expecting, of basically editing drama.
and we got a question here from Josh, and he wants to know, with the new generation coming up, who are very focused on TikTok and Instagram, do you feel that the art of movies and editing, specifically theory, is all going to go away soon?
I don't think so. I'm actually, you know, I say this, I've got a soon to be 13-year-old daughter who does their own TikToks, and they, you know, they get thousands of views and all sorts of stuff on that, and they've taught themselves that. I haven't taught them any editing whatsoever. I've taught them drawing and other stuff that I do, but like, I haven't taught them any editing. And they did a little film school thing at their sort of after school club, my 2 kids, and you know, there's a craft to it. There is a craft to it, and I see them cutting to music, and I see them doing clever little ideas and stuff. And it's, you know, okay, it's a different form, so it's very sort of hit based and punchy, like trailers. You know, they kind of have
Mm-hmm.
a similar craft to putting together trailers and stuff. You know, they kind of stings and most of those things, because they're so short form, but they, you know, they still have a craft to them. I think putting a good trailer together is a craft, and I think that, you know, when it comes to sustaining a narrative over an hour or 2 hours if it's a film, or, you know, 4 hours if it's a Marvel film, like, you kind of, there is a craft to that, which, you know, you won't learn doing the TikToks, you'll have to actually make something that length to really learn it. So I think that's kind of, I don't think film theory itself, it's only just going to get richer because there's more sort of genres of film, if you like. Those short form things are a genre in themselves, and there's a real craft to that. And I'm not sure that I would necessarily be the right person to start up a TikTok channel. It's just not really. I could do a mean teaser, but I think kind of what kind of content and all that, they really understand their audience and what, because that's what they're watching. And I think that's a bit like, I've watched a lot of films and I've watched a lot of good TV drama, and that's how you learn as much through doing as sort of being an audience of that stuff.
Well, and I think about, I don't know what you guys called it in the UK, but over here we'd refer to really fast cutting and what have you as MTV editing, right? And it was completely from the music videos, sort of shifting how we approached cutting. And it's not that it was bad; it just changed, just added something.
Well, I'm guilty of that, because that's literally that first job that I sort of explained. It was this sort of. It's very hard to define what this show was, but it was kind of it was called Metrosexuality, and it was kind of like somewhere between a musical, soap, and a dramedy, if you like. And it had some of the most inventive editing, fast-paced stuff that I've ever done in my entire career. It was mad. It was literally my first job. That's it's what the director was after, and I sort of got that in the interview. I understood it sort of implicitly what they were kind of wanting. And of course, I came from music videos, and although I was doing narratives, I was cutting them in very short form, so it became kind of and I've done a lot of kind of they call them EPKs, and they just call them EPKs and stuff where you are, but like for music artists, and those would always have to be punchy and zappy and like and all of that. And those things do from time to time resurface. They resurfaced in Sherlock when I did it, like they're totally inappropriate on something, say like The Crown, when they did that. But like, I guess kind of the more you try out stuff and you try out different types of editing, the more you sort of learn, and you're able to sort of employ those ideas and techniques when they're appropriate to do so, but like, I mean, you can't cut The Crown like an MTV show. You just can't. It won't work. You can try, I suppose, but like, it's just, that's not what it is. And I think a big part of editing is understanding what you're cutting, like why it exists and what sort of world it's building and all that sort of stuff. And there are shows I've cut which are very sort of snappy. I mean, Peaky has big sort of musical sections in it. It's like full on kind of music, and what they called what we called in the edit suite Tommy porn, where Killian's in slow-mo walking to the camera, in full garb, kind of looking cool, and that's Tommy porn. So it's cut like a music video. It is, and that's how that show works and exists. And it's sort of understanding that, and being able to do it when it's appropriate.
Now, this is kind of a selfish question for me, but here in Toronto, when we did music videos, they had very, very low budgets. And so usually we did, for editing, it was the night shift. So you would come in at 6 p.m., you'd cut all night, and then deliver it to Much Music, or in the States, it'd be MTV, by 7 a.m. What was your type of post schedule, especially if you were able to edit yourself? Because back then, Avids were so expensive.
Right, sure. I mean, my first Avid that I got onto, I came out of film school literally just as my last term in film school, I got to go on an Avid. So I'd done like 3 years at film school, and I'd done a year sort of as an unofficial student at the National Film School, sort of understudying a director there. I wasn't like a proper student. And I was learning on Steambex and PicSyncs and stuff. I was learning on actual film how to cut. And then when I was going through college, it was like videotape or film. And then finally, in the last term, the Avid arrived, and it was just in boxes. We had to assemble it ourselves and learn to edit on Avid. So it's kind of exciting, but also like, I don't know if that's teaching, but anyway, I guess it is in a way. And so when I came out of film school, my first job was like I was a VT op, just duplicating tapes for a company called the Music Video Company, and it was just duplicating music videos, which is kind of how I got into directing music videos. And I would do the night shift, VT opping, and then in the daytime, because fortunately, I don't need much sleep in my life. I'm all right with about 4 hours, so that affords me an extra amount of time that other people don't have. So during the daytime, I would organize and shoot music videos and cut them in the daytime, and then go and do my day job as sort of just duplicating tapes at night.
Exciting work.
Yeah, really exciting work. But like, yeah, I guess kind of, I've done some very long hours on some shows. I did a couple of, on some of the early ones, partly because I was still learning, I think, truthfully. I think I've always made relatively quick decisions, but the craft and skill and decision making gets better and better the more you do it. And I did like a couple of 36-hour non-stop stints editing on my early stuff. I don't have to do that anymore, fortunately. But yeah, it was pretty wild. But you know, if you're into it and you're kind of happy to do it, then that's kind of fine, isn't it? It's you can't be asked to do that. That's inhuman.
Now, I'm interested to talk to you about the feature film you're working on. But is that the film you're not allowed to? And
no, absolutely not. No, I can talk about that. That's literally mine. And you know, so yeah, it's.
Oh, sorry, one sec. Jason just. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Yeah, if you could tell us about it.
Yeah. So basically, the premise of the film came out of a conversation I was having with a friend who was telling me about a study the government did here in the UK of how to stop insurgency in Iraq. And they got a bunch of experts to come up with ideas, sort of military, humanitarian ideas to how to stop insurgency in Iraq. And they spent a lot of money field testing these ideas. And the result came back, and it was one of the most successful field tests they'd ever had. Like this particular idea was just head and shoulders above any other idea of how to do it. But the answer was so preposterous, the British government did put it into practice, because the way to stop insurgency in Iraq, according to this test, was to give everyone a free TV. I know, right? And it wasn't even to give them content, interestingly. People would find their own content, but like TV is a pacifier, entertainment is a pacifier. And of course, what I do for a living is make what I would like to think is thoughtful drama and, you know, thoughtful films, but nonetheless, it does pacify, I mean, at its highest level, insurgency, you know, like, you know, and actually you look at, like in the UK, we've got pretty much a far right government at the moment, and you know, nobody's tipping cars or anything, but we've got the British Bake Off and Strictly Come, you know, it's like we've got entertainment, so we're pacified by that, you know. Also, like I think that there is some power in that. And anyway, it kind of got me thinking about I've always loved sci-fi, and I really wanted to make a sci-fi that was about something. So I came up with this film called The Dark Channel, and it's simplest. It's just about a guy who wakes up. Instead of TVs, they have games, right? So VR games which are immersive, and you go into them. And he wakes up in one of these, but he doesn't know who he is, and he soon comes out of that game, and everyone's telling him he was not a good guy, and you know, everyone's saying, you know, it's just as well you've had your mind erased because you weren't a nice person. Then he finds out he can get his mind from somewhere else. He can get it back, but it happens to be the same location that all of these insurgents, these rebels, if you like, who are trying to bring down the system that's pacifying everyone, they want to go there to sort of basically flick the switch and turn it all off. So he sort of ends up joining their cause, and they're sort of altruistic and for a bigger cause, whereas he's quite hedonistic and about the individual. So there's a whole thing about what is identity, what is the purpose of, being, and all that kind of stuff, all just wrapped up in this mad. I mean, the world's horrendous. Like, the story's relatively simple, but like the world that we've built is very complicated. It's dark. We've got hundreds of VFX in it, and we've really built a world. And it was shot. Some of it was shot in Spain, a little bit in London, but most of it was shot here in Brighton. But the world build and the digital stuff that we've added in really has just sort of lifted that to create, a world which, much like the models in Blade Runner, really, there aren't actually even that many of them in Blade Runner, but they really give you this sense that, this whole world exists, and we've created this mad black and white dystopian urban environment from sunny Brighton, primarily by shooting at night, obviously. So.
You're not saying it's a dystopia over there?
Yeah, well, it is, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very
Well,
much
that was
a dystopia over here.
But... the university I went to was built in the 60s and 70s and has a lot of brutalist architecture. And so,
right.
So many sci-fi films have shot there. And if you watch the end of like the second Blade Runner, like where he dies on the stairs, spoiler alert, or not dies, depending on who you talk to, that looks like one of our buildings.
Right. Okay. Yeah. Sure.
It's very disturbing when you think about it, but
yeah, it's quite interesting, the world we've built, actually, because we've built the idea of a city which has just been added onto. So it's got old stuff and like fruitless stuff on top of, so it's kind of a real mix.
So you're talking about your film?
Yeah.
No, I think that what's so fascinating about that is because that's how it would be, right? It's not like, if you think about it, here's a building from 200 years ago, but we're building a new one that's looks completely different, and it's going to have different requirements, and cars are going to be different, but what are we going to do with the cars that are still gas? Are we going to modify them? How's that going to look? And it makes complete sense. One question I have for you about specifically sci-fi and creating a film for sci-fi, how do you work? Because you want that sense, you want it to be in the future, or you want it to be science fiction, but there also has to need to be a sense of realism to it. You can't go so crazy out, or else you could lose people. You could lose everyone but the hardcore sci-fi fans, right? Like, that's the beauty of Blade Runner and all those, is that there's a realism to it. So when you were writing this or creating this, how did you go about ensuring you had that realism?
Yeah, I mean, there's, it's absolutely true with film that, suspension of disbelief is paramount. It's just like, and the best way to achieve that always is to try and get something to feel true and believable, and that could be done in, the quality of acting, that can be done in the sort of rationale behind stuff, trying to not explain too much, allowing the audience to kind of work out stuff. They've got to work out quite a bit when they watch this. So, there were cuts of the film where I just like, well, let's just explain everything and then pull it back. Cutting my own stuff was a nightmare, by the way, but it was a process. Whereas when I'm cutting other people's stuff, it's really, I'm completely objective, so it's much easier. But there's a process with other editors of me showing the cut and getting feedback and stuff like that. But like, I think going for something that's true. We also, in this, in the film, we've got like a vernacular that's being used where curse words are supplanted with other words and stuff like that. And so there is a certain sort of lingo that, the actors were sort of encouraged to try and kind of be as casual as possible in the way that, we naturally might sort of curse as we speak normally, that it just sort of comes out in that way. So nothing's too forced, and just kind of, I've been very lucky to work on the shows I've worked on as an editor, because you see the directors are able to sort of, when you see the various takes, you see the directors being able to encourage the actors to just do less and do less and do less, so that it's not too, melodramatic, not too overplayed. And we've got some real great actors in this, so I'm quite pleased that we've sort of, whether you understand the world is another question, that's on me, but like whether you believe the world and the people who are in it, I think you will. So that's a great achievement on their part, really.
Now I have a question here from Teodoro, and they want to know, thanks for this talk, is what they say. Were you involved in selecting the anachronistic temp music tracks for Peaky Blinders while cutting the episodes, or were those tracks chosen ahead of time? But they all work perfectly, whatever
they
you...
certainly weren't chosen ahead of time. I mean, I don't know, in the later series, maybe they were. No, actually, I kind of, one of the scenes I'm most sort of endeared to is, I'm pretty sure it was in episode 1, season 2. There's a simple scene where Killian he has to do an execution. He has to shoot this guy in a factory setting. And it's very nicely shot, and Killian's frankly fantastic. He just never stops being fantastic. He can always cut to Killian, they say. But like, nonetheless, it's a gangster thing, and there was something a little bit sort of brutal about it. And I just threw Johnny Cash's Danny Boy on there, and it suddenly had a melancholy, a sadness to it, which kind of just transformed the scene. Music is transformative, and it just, not all the music that's picked, some of it's just picked for just sheer joy of it, but like that was kind of one of those ones where you've chosen a track and it's kind of made the scene, you feel something when you watch it. There's a sadness. He's got to do this, he does it, but like there is a sadness to it. That's this is my job, and it's but yeah, like we chose all the temp tracks. I said this is chose the temp tracks in the edit. Then there's sometimes a rights issue, where like they can't get the rights to a bit, because there's a lot of music in that show. So it's a question of whether they can get the rights to all those bits of music you try, and then like then there is a music supervisor who like offers alternatives or a list of alternatives for you to try out. Sometimes they're added later, but the 2 series I worked on, they were very much the editor's choice, with the director to kind of put them in, but we were the ones who would put them in first off and sort of see what works, because you can't, it's difficult to cut unless you've got something to cut with. So I would say like 90% in series 2. It might be a bit less in series 3, of the tracks that were on there were ones that were chosen kind of in the cut, which is great fun, absolutely joy. It was a real joy to do that job.
Now Josh has followed up with a question, and he says there was a cool video on Sherlock about the text pop-ups from the phone. Could you give us your take on it, and how did the idea come up? What reference did you go through, and also what was your role as the editor for the text message and the use of the text?
Yeah, well, the episode that I cut in particular was a particularly mad one for Tex, because he's at John's wedding, and he basically sort of, everyone in the wedding has text on them. Now you try doing that in an Avid, so it's an absolute nightmare, right? It ain't built for that. But I'm pretty good at temping. I enjoy it, and that's kind of something that I do. But there comes a point when you're like, I don't have time to temp all of this. So like you'd sort of rely on your assistant Shane in that case to kind of like help with that process. But actually, weirdly, on that show, in that particular scene, it was so kind of expansive, the text pop-ups, that I actually ended up getting my own VFX company to do the work on it. So we started using them early in, and kind of, it's just like, this is going to be a big thing. It's a big number. You can't do it in the online. It'll take too much of the online time out. So why don't we just do this as a VFX job? And so, I've just done a sci-fi with hundreds of VFX. That's because I have a VFX company that sometimes services, like they did some VFX on Peaky, some on Sherlock. We've done sort of whole sort of shows before and stuff. So it's kind of, it's a great thing to be able to rely on when you can kind of get that work put in early.
Yeah.
But as far as the style goes, there was some great work in series 1. Shamefully, off the top of my head, I can't remember what the editor's name was. He was a lovely guy, sadly no longer with us, but he was an online editor. So, I think it's a little bit like when you talk about the TikTok thing, like, he was an online editor, so he had a skill set of doing that kind of work. So when it come to, I asked him, I asked him how he was doing those sort of text things on his episodes, in the previous series, and he said he was using Marquee. Now, I didn't go anywhere near Marquee. Not many editors do, but he was an online editor, so he was like totally down with doing Marquee and getting into all that. So it's interesting that then he created that style that was then able to, you can just keep expanding that style. By the time we were doing the episode I worked on, like there's text and pop-ups all over the show. It's like, you're in Sherlock's head and all of that information is coming on the screen, and it just felt kind of right. So it's sort of because of the sort of the style that gets developed in the cutting room, and that very much was something which was developed in the cutting room. It wasn't conceived in the shoot particularly. Like they went back and in the first series went back and shot all of those on a 5D, I think, all those big sort of Sherlock zooms into stuff, just to help land the edit, because you got Benedict's sort of brilliant kind of Sherlock character, thinking of all these things and kind of, identifying the clues and that sort of stuff. And it was like they needed some visual representation of that, and that was something that was thought of after the main shoot, as I was told about it. But then it became endemic of the style, and like that was absolutely right, and it worked really well. So that became something that you would employ. And in fact, actually on my episode, there was a bit, it's a silly joke, but he made an offhand comment about someone's sort of erectile problem early on in the episode, and we just needed a little bit of flashy Sherlockness. So I sort of said to the director, can we go into some cowboy boots for that little joke? So he did a little 5D down to some cowboy boots, and then I added a little sort of pew. It's like really silly, but it was kind of light. It was like light. Yeah. We got to the point where it could be light with it at that point. It's just how Sherlock was thinking, and you can kind of yeah.
Now I have one last question that I ask everyone I've been interviewing. We've been in this pandemic for over a year, and in some areas they're starting to get their fourth wave. Now, because of that, a lot of people have turned to streaming services and sort of discovered new things. Is there any show or movie you discovered over the pandemic that you think people should check out?
I had sort of the first 6-month gap of work that I've ever had when the first pandemic hit. I've been fortunate enough to work since then. So in that time, I saw, a lot of TV. I did manage to get some other types of work beyond editing, and got involved in sort of setting up a news channel, which is a whole nother conversation. But TV I watched though, The Great was really good. I really enjoyed it. I thought that was really well conceived. It was exactly how I'd hoped when I was watching The Favourite, it felt very dull and dreary, and I kind of get what you're trying to do, but it also didn't seem to fit the writing, to me anyway. Obviously it won Oscars and stuff, so what do I know? But like The Great was so much fun, but also it landed the sort of the writing, and the performances were fantastic in it. Huzzah, I say.
Now, I want to say thank you for joining us, but also Josh and Theodore and everyone is saying thanks for your answer. This is some great insights, and you nailed that answer. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
So thank you very much for joining me. I want to thank you. I want to say that this is it for this week. Make sure to check out filmmakeru.com for our latest course, and follow us on Twitter at filmmaker_u, and on YouTube. Make sure to subscribe to the channel and click the bell for weekly notifications. Again, thank you, Mark, for joining me. And of course, thanks to our sponsors, OWC. Go to owcdigital.com for all your filmmaking needs. I'm Gordon Burkell. Thanks for watching.